Season 4 of From is not too far away, and one of the most requested things I get asked on social media is to make a family tree for the show. And yeah, there will be spoilers. Finally, after a couple of weeks of work, I built out a few different FROMily trees to share with you all while we wait for Season 4. So today we'll be going over the main characters and how they're all connected. Let's get started. If you need to better understand what the linear connections and different colors mean, you can pause here to look at the color chart. We're going to be going over the characters that are related to each other, either through relationships, marriage, or blood lineage. We're going to be going over the reincarnations of characters. We're going to be going over the big connections between characters that we may or may not know all about. We're also going to go over the possibilities of potential reincarnations, as well as past life partners and possibly people who are the same person. So let's start with the first characters we follow in the show, the Matthews family. We have Jim Matthews and Tabitha Matthews and their children Ethan and Julie. We know that Ethan is possibly the storyteller. We know that Julie is a story walker. We know that Tabitha is a reincarnation of Miranda. And we also know that Jim did not survive the end of season 3, and his daughter Julie came back from the future to save his life from the man in yellow. Now we know that in season 3, Tabitha returned to the township with Victor's father Henry, who had not seen his wife and children in almost 40 years. Miranda and Tabitha's memories fused at the end of season 3, where Tabitha was able to recall her past life as Victor's mother. Now remember, the red line between Tabitha and Miranda means that they are confirmed reincarnations of one another. However, the blue line between Victor and Ethan is a possible reincarnation, because I'm not ruling out that two reincarnations of one person can exist at the same time in the same place within the township. Now this does not imply that Jim is a reincarnation of Henry, nor that Julie is a reincarnation of Eloise. However, multiple truths can exist at one time, which means multiple reincarnations can exist in the same realm, especially if Victor has been here so long. It's possible that in the real world he already reincarnated into Ethan. However, both of these characters, Ethan and Victor, if they are reincarnations of each other, are also possibly reincarnations of the boy in white, who also exists as a spirit during the same time period as Victor and Ethan. Now, I did put the fact that the boy in white and the man in yellow could be connected through some form of reincarnation. A lot of the FROMily thinks heavily that Ethan is connected or a reincarnation of the man in yellow. And that would make sense, since the man in yellow is the person that took out Jim, and Ethan is always wearing yellow. However, we have no such evidence to fully confirm that besides them both wearing yellow. It is more likely that Ethan and Victor are reincarnations of each other, and that the boy in white was one of their original reincarnations before Victor was ever born. So let's first go over the sets of characters that don't have many connections to anything or anyone else. Like Kenny, for example. Although he's lost both of his parents, there is nothing I can really pull for Kenny at this moment because of a lack of information and so much of his suffering throughout the seasons. However, I do have him on another page for a future video about him being a reincarnation of someone from back in the day, but we'll get to that later. Now, Sarah and Nathan, we know Sarah heard the voices. She accidentally took out her brother and took his life instead of Ethan. You know from my previous theory videos that I theorized that had Sarah done to Ethan what the voices wanted her to do, then Sarah would have been turned into a monster and joined the 30 or 40 monsters that roam the woods and the caves in the township, because that's what happens to end the cycle. Everyone else would have been set free, but everyone who agrees with Sarah and the monstrosity of what she wanted to do to Ethan would all be turned into monsters, and that's why there's so many monsters besides the original 12 townspeople that made this deal for immortality. Some of the other characters that don't really have any major connections at this moment are Donna and Acosta and Christy and Marielle, although I do have Christy and Marielle as partial reincarnations that we'll get to later on, that you might actually have your mind blown a little bit, because we had some discoveries about something that Christy found that belonged to Marielle that Marielle also had a copy of, similar to Tabitha's bracelet that Miranda had, but that's for later. Tom the bartender and Father Cautry, they had no other connections to anyone in the town really, outside of friendships with the characters, so they're kind of all on their own on this chart. This purple line between Tabitha and Jade is to validate their previous reincarnated lifetimes, like relationship, that they were a couple in a past lifetime, the original time frame frame from 1506 where the deal was made for immortality, where the Ankui child revealed the memories to them at the end of season 3. I'll explain the dates and times and years later on in the reincarnation video, but for now, since we know that Jade and Tabitha are reincarnations of Christopher and Miranda, then they had a relationship. I'm putting that purple line there to identify that they had a previous relationship in past lifetimes. We know that Jade is the direct reincarnation of Christopher. Now, if you've ever watched my theory videos about Clara and how suspicious she is and how she's changing the story over and over again to protect Victor, you know that my theory is that she is Eloise, who either story walked and lost her memories or just hid away for a long time and is protecting Victor, and Victor does not realize that is his sister, and that she's just doing all this because she might be Eloise. However, the other possibility is too that she could be Christopher's daughter. Christopher, we don't know if he escaped the town, but it could be that he escaped and went into the real world with Eloise and raised her as his own and gave her the name Clara, or that Christopher himself had a daughter and said, hey, if you ever end up here, don't do what I did. I did not listen to Victor. Always listen to Victor. Protect Victor and you'll make it out alive. So TBD, but that's why there are green connections between Victor, Christopher, and Clara. Again, Clara is an overlooked character, but she is up to no good in the background, and I'm sure we'll find out more about her and what she's been up to in season 4. Now let's talk about Ellis's parents, Boyd and Abby. Boyd is our sheriff. He tries to protect everyone in town. Boyd has seen a lot and gone through a lot of loss in this show. His wife Abby kept having dreams. She thought if she took out different people in the town that they would all wake up if they were to pass away. However, she ended up losing her life because she almost took Ellis's life, and so Boyd had to make a quick decision and take the life of his wife, who now haunts him as a ghost. Their son is Ellis. Ellis is married to Fatima now. Fatima gave rebirth to Smiley, who is now, I guess, Boyd's grandson. You know, your blood is my blood now. I just threw Smiley in there for some fun, but there is kind of a connection to the monsters now with the actual townspeople. So going further down, Boyd also has this connection to, I would say, the midwife banshee in some way because of it facilitating the rebirth of Smiley and guiding Fatima and Elgin into the root cellar and for her to give rebirth at the end of season 3. But the banshee itself is really honestly connected more so to Tilly, Elgin, and Fatima. And so I threw these connections in here because when it comes to Fatima, a lot of us thought that the banshee was a reincarnation of her, but I don't think that's the case. I think the banshee is one of the entities that helped the original people of the town make the deal for immortality, and it is her duty to rebirth the monsters and provide that immortality to them anytime one of them actually passes away from one of the townspeople. And so we have this green line connecting the midwife banshee to Fatima and the banshee to Smiley because she midwifed his delivery, but the banshee also connects to Tilly because Tilly saw the banshee in Ellis's dreams. We don't know for sure if Tilly was astral projecting in those dreams, but it could be very likely that she was, and she doesn't remember it because for a while I thought and I think that Tilly is a witch. Elgin and Tilly had a very close bond, just like Tilly and Fatima had a close bond, and Fatima ultimately took Tilly's life. That's going to be all covered in the Tilly theory video later, but I wanted to throw in Randall there too because Randall is a character who is like connected to some of the monsters, but he's not really connected to anyone in the town yet that we know of. There's a connection between Christy and Marielle because they used to be a couple and now they are a couple again, but Randall and Bacta are just kind of floating there, but they revolve around Tilly and Elgin because they also came on the bus with them. Now remember, when it comes to Tilly, she was suspicious. She was dancing in the rain. We're going to go over that in the theory video later, but Bacta, you may remember, is the bus driver who, you know, didn't believe everyone at first when they arrived to town. However, her grandmother was the one that knew of the music box nursery rhyme that told the other characters, oh, my grandmother used to know this rhyme. And Tilly is a grandmother of 7 children, and the 7 children of the Ankui kids is too much of a tie-in to ignore. Now you may see this line connecting Boyd to Martin, and that is because there is a big connection there with them somehow, some way. And although Randall and Marielle are not connected on this main FROMily Tree chart, they are connected to Martin in different ways later on when it comes to the reincarnation theories that I have. Julie is also connected to Martin for the mere fact that he was also chained up in the dungeon, and he was the one that warned Boyd about the music box curse. And so since Julie has already met Martin, who also met Boyd, they have that connection there. Some final thoughts: we do not know what other characters in town outside of the woods realized that they have had past lives in this town. So there will be many characters in this chart that could also be reincarnations. I am at the moment ruling out Jim because he was having a hard time believing Tabitha and Jade's story about how they used to be a couple and how their daughter was sacrificed in 1506 to the town for the gift of immortality to whatever this evil entity is before the man in yellow took his life. With that said though, it is very likely that Jim was not a reincarnation of anybody anybody, or if he was, he doesn't remember his past life, because if he was a past life Henry, which would not make sense, it'd be too perfect for him to end up with Tabitha and Henry end up with Miranda, but if he was a past life version of Henry, then it's very likely that he didn't remember the past life before he passed away, because his previous reincarnation is still in the town. But there are other characters that could very well be reincarnated and just have found out, and we do not know because it happened off camera. So keep that in mind as we go into the next video of this series. That's all for this video, but don't forget to come back to watch the next video where I go over the reincarnations and possible reincarnations of characters in the future season, and let me know what you thought in the comments below about this recap of all the characters and how they are connected.